Hello.
Good.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Genially.
I'm waiting.
Yeah. Doing is I'll first out write down certain steps, and then from the previous session as well as today what we'll be covering up. Okay, and then we'll start with the practical sessions. Okay, there are few things we need to look to regarding MySQL database that I'll be teaching you today, and then we'll see some practicals how to fetch data from a particular table which is inside a particular database. So today first I'll just
So
have a
I've
yeah,
sent the
hello.
request. I've sent the request of recording.
uh, where is it? mm,
I'll send it again.
uh, yeah, sure. Okay, it's fine now.
Yes, sir.
Allow recording.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so let's start with this. So first thing what we need to do is to I'll just share my screen. Let's start then. Okay, first thing what we'll be doing is, this is a bit yesterday also we covered this in the last session, but still I'll cover this and then we'll go ahead with that. Okay, these are the few things what we need to learn today before going ahead with the practicals. Okay, I suppose we have covered up till session the topic 4, and now today we'll be seeing all this. So I'll just go back with I'll just start from the first, and we'll proceed with that. Okay, is it okay, Jinal and Nikit?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
so let's start with this. I'll open my MySQL client, command line. I'll enter my password. I'm connected to MySQL. Now first thing is what it says, we connected to MySQL, check the list of database exists. So to just find out the number of database what exists in your MySQL, you can write this query. Okay, you'll get the list of databases what already exist. These are some system defined databases which already are created at the time of installation. So now next thing is to create our own database. So you can create your own database with any name. Okay, I'm trying to create with this name Python underscore MySQL. Okay, it says query okay, one row affected. That means the database has been created. Now you can just verify it by running the same command, that is show databases, and you can just check out you have this database created here. You can see this. Okay. Next thing is, once you have created the database, now you need to work with this database. Like you need to create tables inside this database. So you need to make sure you make this particular database available. Right now, by default, this database is not active. You are by default under information underscore schema, which is the default database. Right now I am trying to open up this database, or you can say make this particular database active, so that we can go into this database and try creating tables inside these databases. Is it okay, Nikit? Janel?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'll say use Python SQL. So now you can say you are into Python underscore MySQL database, and whatever you do henceforth will be saved inside this database. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now I'll say create database. Sorry, we'll be creating a table. I'm just creating a dummy table here. Okay. Create table. I'll say student. Round brackets. I'll say roll number. Okay. Oh, okay. So we have created successfully created this table called students, where roll number, name, fees are the column names to that particular table. Int, varchar, int respectively are the data types to this particular column, and not null are constraints basically. So I'll just help you with this. What is constraint? Constraint is nothing but enforcing some rules on this particular column, so that nobody can enter null value, because roll number, name, and fees, these three columns are mandatory, and they have to insert values inside. Like somebody who's trying to insert data into this table, students have to insert values under roll number, name, and fees column. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Niket, are you in?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, great. So I'll just write a query to insert. I'll just add some few records into these tables, into this table. Okay.
Mm.
I'll add one more. Okay. So here what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to insert values inside my table now. I said this is a standard query. Nikit, Jinal, I suppose you have ever gone to this query. Jinal, Nikit.
No, sir.
No, sir, nothing.
Okay, that's why I told you this. This is a bit complex now. Okay, fine. This is I'll try to make it simple. Insert into student values is stating that you're trying to insert a row into this particular table called students, having the first value will be assigned to roll number, column roll number. Second value will be assigned to name, and the third value will be assigned to fees.
Okay.
Is it okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So now respectively I've added 3 rows here, 3 records. Like
Okay.
now, can you sir help us with the students table? Like can see the data inside the students table. So for that purpose, what you need to do, you write a simple query. You can see this select star from student. Select all columns from students. So when I say select star from student, it returns me all columns and all rows inside that particular table.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Fine.
So you haven't put a space between roll numbers. So there is some rule for that or no rule? Just
Where you're speaking about here?
in create table, no
हाँ.
create table ऊपर
Okay.
वहाँ पे
Yeah, this
रोल
na in
नंबर
the
में
column.
स्पेस नहीं डाला है तो
Always remember when you give a
हाँ
column
तो वहाँ पे
name,
स्पेस नहीं रहेगा तो एरर आएगा.
स्पेस
हाँ.
रहेगा तो एरर आएगा. स्पेस रहेगा तो
ओके.
अगर आपको स्पेस रखना
ओके.
ही है ना तो व्हाट यू कैन डू ना आइदर यू यूज एन अंडरस्कोर
ओके.
okay or else you can
ओके गॉट
give a square brackets at the start at the end of the column name. If you don't want to give underscore now, you just mention something like this.
अच्छा. ओके ओके समझा. ओके
समझा?
गॉट इट. यस.
Okay. Jinal, I hope getting this.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is what I need to teach you with this SQL. Create tables हो गया. We added some records here. We saw the select statement. Okay, now for today's task in Python, what we need to do now? We need to fetch details. Like we saw the select statement here, right? This is basically a query written in MySQL, right? But think about you create an application and you want to display the data what is present in this table in your Python application. Then how you'll go ahead with it? Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Niket and Jinal,
यस.
remember what we are trying to do now. This data is already there in your database, right? In the form of a table. So now with your Python application, you want to display that data on the console of your Python application. So let's see how we can do that. Okay. I suppose yesterday we saw this example. So I'll just we'll have just a revision of this and then we'll go ahead with this example. So you can see, I suppose, import mysql.connector. This is what we require if you want to perform queries on MySQL with the help of Python. You require mysql.connector. I suppose you know why I mentioned this from MySQL.connector import error. Any error received by MySQL connector while trying to send a request and fetch a request from MySQL, that will be listed out inside this. So with the help of try catch, what we can do, we can catch all those errors.
So every time we use something from MySQL, we have to write all these things.
Yes, you have to write these 2 lines. That is mandatory. You need
Okay.
to do this.
The first, not the rest.
No, 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 not the rest.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Uh, No, no, Nikit, what you're trying to ask me regarding these part?
Huh? Yes.
Okay, remember this. Like for example, this is something which we require to get to these functions and everything. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
And second most important thing is, like, there are 5 steps what you need to do to get connected to your database. So with this function, you
Hmm.
can make sure this particular part is something which is mandatory. This is mandatory. You need
Okay.
to tell him what is your where is your localhost, where is your MySQL server, which particular database you are targeting.
Okay.
Can I connect with this particular username password? Means either I'm an authorized person or not.
Okay.
So this is something which is mandatory. You cannot avoid this.
Acha. Okay.
Okay,
Yes.
fine. So fine with this. Okay. So today what we are starting with is, okay, in this session shows how to query data from MySQL database in Python by using the MySQL Python. Okay. Now, in Python, there are few special functions which are used to fetch data from MySQL database, or you can say MySQL table. There are few functions like fetchone, fetchmany, fetchall. Okay,
Hmm.
I'll be discussing all this. Okay, so we'll talk about fetch one right now. What this function does: method returns the next row of a query result set or none in case there is no row left. That means like you need to display a row. You need to display the rows one by one. Okay. So what you can do, you can use this fetch one method. Okay. Like for example, I'll just copy this example and then I'll explain this. Okay. I suppose this is till here. So what we have done, we have like for example in the earlier example also we created our own function called connect. Here also I've created my function connect. In that the first part is to connect to my database. Once that is successful, what will happen? I create a variable called cursor. Okay, equal con.cursor. Con.cursor means con.cursor is nothing but it allows to send a query to your SQL server. So con.cursor means what you are making. For example, you are asking the connector that if you have connected successfully, then please allow me to query on this particular database. So for that purpose, con.cursor, what he'll do, he'll create an object of that. We'll create an object of this cursor, cursor.execute. Look at this, cursor.execute. That means I'm telling this cursor, go to Python underscore MySQL. Inside that, you'll find you need to execute this particular query. You need to execute this query. Like for example, right now what I was trying to do here, select star from students, right? So what I am right now doing here, I'm into MySQL, but here I'm not into MySQL. I'm into Python program and into my Python application. So I'm using MySQL connector to connect to the database to MySQL. Then using this cursor object, I am trying to execute this query on MySQL. Like for example, I'm writing this with the help of whom? With the help of this cursor. Cursor is nothing but an object of MySQL connector. So the cursor is like for example, you can say it's a kind of a person who writes the query and executes the query. Like for example, right now here what I'm doing, select from students, right? So I'm doing this right for myself. Hello,
Yes,
Sorry,
sir.
what you said earlier, I couldn't hear you.
hello, Janel.
Yes,
What happened?
just the last few sentences which you spoke, I couldn't hear those sentences.
Okay. Like for example,
The connect to cursor, I understood the one MySQL, what you were explaining out there. In the
okay,
burst, I couldn't hear because your voice was very far off in that.
okay. So what we are trying to do is to connect this with the
Hmm.
cursor with this. What is this con dot cursor? It's a kind of a function that I'm trying to create on this connection. What is this connection? Connection is nothing but we are creating a connection to MySQL, and with this function, with this function, which is capable of executing the query
From
from Python into MySQL.
yeah.
Okay, so cursor is capable with this function called execute. You'll take this query to this particular MySQL, fire that, and return me some rows. He'll return me rows. You can see this cursor dot fetch one. You can see this cursor dot
Okay.
fetch one. It's
Yeah.
nothing but a function which fetch me rows. It will fetch me rows, and then once we get all the rows from the table, with the help of the while loop, I am trying to print all those rows. Like for example, just think about, I'll just change this table name to select star from students. You can see the select star from students, right? So right now I have this table which have three records, right? You can see this 1, 2, and 3. Jinal.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now what will happen once this cursor goes into MySQL and runs this query? He'll fetch. He'll fetch with the help of this function. He'll fetch all rows. Okay. That means this row will have three count. He'll have three rows right now. So while row is not none, while row is not none means unless there are unless there is records inside this row, print the row. Getting this?
Yes.
This is like while I is equal to 0 and I is less than 3. That means
Hmm.
this is my 0, this is my 1, this is my 2. And this is my first record, first row, second row, third row. So with this while loop, what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to get all the rows what this particular function fetch to me when I call that function, and I'm just printing out them. You can see this. So what will happen? Cursor dot fetch one will return me what, the first row, that is one Nikit 12,000, right? Then what will happen next? He'll come to the while row has some values, right? So he'll print the Nikit's data. Then I'm trying to run this function again to check whether he has more rows or not. So he'll go and he'll fetch. Okay, he'll check. Okay, Gina's record is also there. So he'll take that record and save it into this. So while loop will again check whether this particular variable has some records or not. Okay, he'll find the Gina's record, he'll print. Then again I'm trying to use this fetch one to check whether there are more records into this table. He'll find, okay, Lalit's record is still there. Okay, he'll go to the while loop. Okay, here still there is one record. He'll print. Now what happens once this cursor, when this function after the third record, once this function runs, he'll find none. There is no more records left. So this while loop will exit. This while loop will exit. Is
Okay.
it okay?
Yes, sir.
Niket, getting this?
Yes, sir.
And finally, you need to make sure close the cursor and close the connection. The connection what you open to the database, and the cursor what you created to execute this query. So you make sure you both these things should be closed. Okay.
Hmm.
Okay.
Okay, and this is the main function. It is nothing but you're calling the function. I'll save this and I'll try to run this. Let's see whether it fetches all the data from the students table. Okay, I'll just click on this. Here you can see this.
Yes, sir.
So now what happened? One by one, he fetched all the records from the students table.
Mm.
Is it okay, Gene?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was fetch one. Now there's one more example. There is one more function called fetchall. In this case, the number of rows in the tables is small. You can use the fetchall method to function to fetch all the rows from the database table. Now, Nikit and Chinal, in the earlier example, we used fetch one, right?
Yes, sir.
Hmm.
So what was the functionality of this was he was fetching one row at a time, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But think about you need to fetch all the rows at a time at one single time.
Mm.
Okay.
Okay,
Hmm.
but you need to be very cautious that that particular table should be of not a large data, like don't try to use any table which has lakhs of record and you try to fetch the data with this fetch one or fetch all also, because it
Okay.
will it will be an overhead to your server, because it will take a lot of time one by one na, fetching the data,
Yeah.
getting it. So this is not recommended in terms of large tables which have large number of records, like thousand lakhs of records are there. Don't use these functions. Okay.
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 Okay. So here we have something called fetch all. Okay. This is also recommended for small tables, not much. Like you can say like somewhere around 500 to 1000 records table, you can easily use fetch all.
Okay.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. So here everything is same. Everything is same. It's just there are few difference. Like we earlier we used the while loop, right, to fetch the record one by one. Here, as I told you, fetch all will fetch all the rows at a time. So we don't require that fetch one concept. We have the fetch all concept. Okay, I'll just copy this example and then let's see. I hope you all understanding this concept.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Jinal was quite worried about this topic, right, na Jinal? MySQL.
Yes.
Okay. Now, this part is totally the same. Even this is totally same. This is all till here. Everything is same to the previous example. The main thing was cursor dot fetch all.
Okay.
There was fetch one. Here I have mentioned fetch all. So when I say fetch all, what he'll do, he'll go to this students table and fetch all the data inside these rows. All the data means all the rows, maybe 1000 rows, 500 rows, all will be there inside this rows, in this variable rows. Here you can see this. Look at this. With fetch all, you have the capability to display the number of records you fetched. Like for example, here you can see it says 3 rows in the set. You can see this.
Yes.
So this means he is counting the rows also. But with fetch one, you cannot get the number of counts because he fetches one row at a time. Here we are fetching all the rows at a time, so we are capable to display the number of rows present or number of records present in my table. So with this help of cursor dot row count attribute, or you can say property, you can display the number of rows present in your table. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
And then with the for loop, what I'm trying to for row in rows. Rows has all the records. He'll send first record, then he'll print, then he'll send the second record, then he'll print, third record, print, and so on. It will continue unless and until he reaches the last record. And once the last record is arrived, and he'll exit the for loop. And then you need to make sure cursor close and connection is closed. Fine. It is just the difference is that it will fetch all the rows at a time. You can have the capability to display the number of rows fetched. Okay.
Okay.
So I'll try to run this. Let's see. Okay. Okay, you can see this.
Yeah.
This is only possible with fetch all and maybe fetch many, the next function. So is it clear with this, Geenal and Nikit?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
And but I'll not advise you to use these functions on large tables, huh? Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So
Next
then,
important thing is fetch many. Now, uh, you'll just can you'll just read this note? I'll just be there. Yeah. Sorry, I mean.
no problem.
Okay. So you read this note, Geenal, Nikit.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So is it clear with this the logic behind what is fetch one and fetch all? Now you can just check what is fetch many. Here you read this for relatively big tables. It takes time to fetch all rows and return the result set. In addition, fetch all needs to allocate enough memory to store the entire result set in the memory. This is inefficient and not a good practice. So, with the help of this fetch many method that returns next number of rows of the result set, which allows us to balance between the time and the memory space. So that means this is nothing but it allocates buffer memory. Okay, it tells me the buffered memory. We can just check out number of rows we'll be fetching before we try to get it. Like for example, here you can see this example fetching size. You can see this. Okay, I'll just first I'll just type this example. Then we'll just see. Okay, I suppose till here everything is the same. Okay, this time, look at this. What is this mentioned here? Niket and Jinal, as I told you, fetch many is a function basically used for which purpose? Is to use large amount of records from huge tables.
Okay.
Okay,
Yes,
so
sir.
in that case, you need to allocate some buffer memory to this particular cursor. You need to set, because if you want to work with fetch many, you have to allocate a buffered memory to your MySQL. Because what happens for large tables, it is not possible to work with fetch all, because it will degrade your performance of your application. So in that case, fetch many will help you. It is just you need to allocate the buffered is equal to true. So he needs to set the buffered memory to true. Okay. Okay, you can see this fetching size is equal to 2. You can see this fetching size is equal to 2. Niket and Jinal,
Yes.
fetching size is equal to 2. Records cursor dot fetch many fetching size, that is nothing but 2. You would have directly written numeric 2 here also, but I've just kept it inside a particular variable fetching size.
Okay.
Okay, then I'm trying to print the number of row count. Fetching size, I'm trying to printing 2 books record using cursor. You can see this
Yes.
means this is like you just try to tell him how much rows you want to fetch. Like, just a minute, look at this. When I run this, total number of records is 3. Print 2 books record using fetchman. Means what is happening here now? You can manually handle the number of records you want to display from the this, what we can say, from the table. Okay, by giving the fetching size, it is just simply what you are trying to do is to manage the number of records you want to fetch from a particular table. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
So, but make sure you mention buffered, so that he'll make sure he'll be having the buffered memory. Like if you have a lakhs of records and you give the fetch size somewhere around 50,000 fetching size, so it will, what he'll do, he'll save all those 50,000 records into that buffer memory, so that he can perform, or he can display those records in hardly few seconds. Is it okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So is it clear? So we have these 3 functions which you can use to display the records: fetch one, fetch all, fetch many. Okay. In the next session, we'll try to go ahead with the insert query, trying to insert data. Like for example, here we saw I try to insert some values, right? But this is from the MySQL interface, right? So in the next session, what we'll do, we'll create an
Hmm.
application where we try to insert record from the Python. We'll give a we'll fire the query from the Python command line, and that will insert a record in the respective table. We'll be performing insert, update, and delete. 3 operations we'll be performing in the next session. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
So maybe
Yes.
next week would we end up we'll end up with this Python training by next Sunday. Okay.
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 And today with this video link, I'll be sending you some exercises what you demanded, right? You requested yet yesterday,
Yes.
Nikhil.
Yes, sir.
So I have
Yes.
collected some 10 to 50, maybe somewhere 10 to 12 examples exercises, as well as I've also mentioned their solutions. But make sure you try it first by yourself, and then try to look for the
Okay.
solution. Okay.
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 Okay,
And
fine.
sir, you'll share today's
Yeah,
link
yeah,
also.
yeah, yeah,
Word and the Word file.
yeah, yeah, sure. One Word file, I'll share it on the last day. That is in the
No, share half the Word file, no, in
I'll
text.
I'll I'll send you the whole thing. I'll send you the whole thing. Not to worry. Okay,
Okay.
not to
Okay.
worry.
Cool.
Fine.
Yeah, fine.
Yes.
So we'll stop today. Here, I hope you did understood all these things.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Jinal, you have recorded the this na video.
Yes.
Yes, but you also share the link.
I'll share the link. I'll share the link.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.